Hello and welcome to the second part in our Dominion 6 guide for new players. I hope you found the first one informative and that this one will be useful as well. In this second part we'll be explaining the map and UI. So when you've just loaded up your Dominion 6 game, you'll first start on this message page here. It contains two messages of lore which you can read if you want an understanding of what's happening, kind of like gives you the background of what's happening in the game. Pressing escape with the exit button here will then bring you to the map screen, which will probably look similar but certainly not identical to mine. What you can now see of the map is the known world to your faction. What you know is based off what age you started in. So if you're like me, you started in the Middle Age, we can see provinces 2 distance away from our home province, which is this one here. If you started in the early age, then you will be only seeing 1 tile away, late age 3. Everything else must be discovered by moving your units so that you can see into the ether. So in this episode, I'm going to go over in depth quite a few things you can see on this screen. It's not going to be the most action-packed episode, so if you're already kind of familiar with the Dominion's UI and the map, you might want to skip over to the next episode if you want to go straight into the action. Otherwise, if you just want to, make sure that you know the basics and make sure you understand the map properly, stick around. So let's go to our capital. So it should be the currently selected province. Here you can see your currently selected province by the flashing flag. In this case, this is the only coloured flag in a sea of white flags. These white flags here you can see are owned by independents. This one here is actually owned by us. In the future, when you do see other nations, their flags will also have a certain colour and a little sigil over the top. You can change which province you have selected by right-clicking on a province, and that will select that province there. You can also, if you go onto the game preferences, have it so that left click selects a province. I prefer right click, it's what I'm used to. So when you click on a province, you can see your commanders in that province on the left, the name, number, and overview of the province on the top right here, the current Dominion scales and their effects over here in the Dominion tab in the middle right, and then also the buildings and sites within this province listed here, and this includes all buildings and magical sites that are currently on the province itself. These yellow and blue lines here denote provinces that are connected to this one. The yellow lines mean that there is a land connection between this province and that province there. So for example, from Ulm to Hamme, we can see that there's a land connection here. Whereas between Ulm and Baptizer, we can see that there's a water connection. So also, if we click on Yankeep here, we can see that there are yellow, blue, yellow connections. What this means is they are land connections that can only be crossed if both provinces are cold or your units can swim. There are also other connections, yellow, red, yellow connection, which we don't have access to here. Means that both sides need to have heat on both sides, or your units have mountain survival. But we'll go into that more later on. The white line here that we can see in Yankeep denotes that this is going into a gateway or a cave entrance where your troops will move to another map, and we'll go over that in a little bit. This yellow aura here that you can see surrounding Ulm denotes that this is in our Dominion. This is the spread of our current Dominion, which you can also see if you right click on your starting province. You can see these white lit candles here. This means that it's your Dominion. There are also enemy Dominions that you can see which will have black candles. There's also the absence of Dominion like we can see in Hamme or Yankeep. Dominion is very important. If no provinces on the map have any of your Dominion, your nation is wiped out and you lose the game. This is what's known as being Dominion killed or Dom killed in the community. Also, if you own no more provinces, you will lose the game. Try not to let either of these things happen if you can. If it does, no big deal. You can either revert to a previous save or just start a new game. So if a province is within your Dominion, or if you have a commander in the province, you'll be given its basic stats, which you can see here over on the right. We're going to go over what these different stats mean. So terrain tells you what type of terrain is in the province, like if it's plains, forest, farmland, highlands, etc. The type of terrain is important because it factors into what the other statistics will be. So for example, farmlands will usually have a higher population than other types of terrains, but they'll have lower resources and less chance of having magic sites. Plains are the basic type of terrain. If you hover over the terrain type, it will also give you a brief description of what it is. So for plains, because it's the default, isn't really showing us. If we click on, say, Forest of Gila, we can see the terrain is a forest and a river, and it tells us that forests have good resources, they hinder movement, and there's chances of more magic sites. And because it's next to a river, it will have higher income than other forests. So terrain will also determine how many movement points it takes to move through it. Sometimes you'll be able to move more than one province in a turn, but we'll go on that later. The terrain also affects the battle maps that you will have. And now one of the main features of Dominion 6 that they've added is that they've changed how the maps are. So you can have, say, in a forest, there'll be much more trees, which will block your formations. There can be hills, which, you know, also will muck up your formations, cause units have to climb them to get up, etc. So terrain does actually make much more of an impact than it did in previous games. If we click over here, back over to Ulm, we can see that the next part of the list is population. Mousing over population shows us that a high population gives a high income and a high resource value. So the higher the population is in a province, the higher your gold income, your resource income, the number of recruitment points in a province will be, and that affects how well you can recruit things, but we'll go into that a little bit later. These resources here are the resources you need when you're recruiting units or commanders. You don't get to save resources from one month to the next. You need to, if you're going to use your resources, you need to use it within that 1 month. So for example, if we don't use any resources this month, we're not going to end up with 404 resources. We're still only going to have 202. Supplies, which are here. So you can see that one human-sized unit requires one supply point in order to be fed. Supplies are based off of the population, the scales, and fort proximity in a province. So you got to make sure as well that your supply usage here, which we can see is currently 30, if your supply usage is over the number of supplies inside a province, then your army will start to become diseased as the troops are not fed. This is not good. Usually this isn't too much of an issue until you're fielding large armies, but in places such as wastes or swamps, the number of supplies they have is usually much lower because the population is lower, and sometimes they can have nasty magical sites that increase death scales, but we'll get onto that in a little bit. The next tab that we can see is the defense tab. This is the amount of local militia that you have defending a province. You can't move them like armies, and they only stay in one place, but you can spend gold to increase the amount of defense that you have in a province. So the next one we can see here is unrest. Unrest is the local unrest to your rule. Certain events or actions can raise unrest to the point where the province will not pay taxes to you. So you'll lose out on any income that you might be getting from that province. If the unrest reaches 100, you cannot recruit any units from that province. So don't annoy your people too much. There is also a chance they can come up in an open rebellion against you, where they will try and kick off against you. So coming down to the Dominion tab here, we can see what your, or the enemy Dominion is in this province. So currently, we can see that we have 2 candles of Dominion strength in our own province. If it's black candles, as I said previously, that'll be an enemy Dominion. If there's no Dominion presence, then there'll be no candles. You can also see what current scales are in this province here, which you can get more information on by left-clicking. Scales will be different in different provinces because they depend on the effect of the current Dominion inside that province, random events, and also any magic sites that might be there. So we can see here that these are the scales that we chose on Pretender creation. They're the ones showing up because it's in our Dominion, and we're pretty sure there's no other magical sites here. The Building and Sites tab here shows you what's currently in this province. So we have a fortification in this province. Fortifications are defensive buildings where you can recruit from your national roster. If you remember in the last episode when we looked at our nation overview, all those units there can be recruited in any place with a fortification. Otherwise, you have to rely on what can be locally produced within the province for choices to recruit. Laboratories allow you to recruit mages, allow those mages to also perform research in a province, and give your commanders in that province magical items or gems. We'll go into this later as well. Temples allow you to recruit sacred units. They help spread your dominion and make your preachers better at telling everybody how great you are. Again, we'll talk more about them later, but just think, temples, good. If we look at the top left of the screen, you can see your current treasury and the amount of income you'll receive over the next turn. You can left click on either of these for a breakdown of your current turn costs for treasury, which we can see here, and your current breakdown of the income, where it's coming from, and what you're spending on. This little number here within the brackets is your current troop upkeep. So this is currently what you're spending on your armies and on your commanders. In the middle of the screen, you can see your current gem income. For us now, we can only see earth gems, depending on which nation you chose. This might be different. The number here denotes how many you have in your treasury. The number in brackets denotes how much you'll receive over the next end turn. Again, like the income and the treasury tab, you can click on this to see the number of gems in your treasury and also the current pool of these gems in your commander's possession. We'll go into why you might give your commanders that later. Just know that gems are used for casting spells in the battlefield, or in rituals, or for forging magical items. At the very top left of the screen, we can see here that the current turn is turn 1. We're in spring, in year 0 of the Ascension Wars. After about 3 turns in a season, it'll progress to the next, spring to summer, then autumn, then winter. These seasons will change the temperature of the world and alter the climate scales in the provinces. So we can see now that currently we have heat 2. It's fairly hot in Ulm. That's because of our dominion. As we go into summer, the chances are this will increase even further, becoming very hot, and in winter this will probably cool down to something more usual. The effects of these, as I say, is to be used off when you're moving things. So like, for example, if Yankeep and Hamain both get cold enough, we can move units along this yellow-blue-yellow line. But let's not worry about it too much for now. We are currently, as it stands, on the main plane, the Pantokrator's realm. You can get here by clicking on either this button here on the top right of the screen, or by pressing the hotkey 1. On our map here, we can see these strange circles. What these are gateways to another plane. Specifically, these are gateways to the underworld, the underhome, or the realm beneath. You can get to the realm beneath by either clicking on this icon here or pressing number 2, or alternatively by right-clicking on one of these gateways. It will teleport us to the underworld map. Do note that you will not be able to do this if you do not see one of these gateways and you can't see into the underworld. You just don't know where it is. So in your game, if there hasn't been any of these that have spawned nearby, don't worry, you'll find them eventually. If you're a nation, for example, Agartha, that has spawned underground, congratulations. This will be in reverse. You'll be seeing the underground first, rather than the Pantokrator's realm. On the top right of the screen here, you can see many symbols. And what they will do is they'll take you to the various overviews and get pages in the game. If you mouse over them, you can see their function and the relevant hotkey for them. Remember, if you ever want to see what a hotkey is, press Shift and question mark, and it'll bring up all the relevant hotkeys for the current page. Okay, so that wraps up the basic UI for Dominions, as well as a brief description of the map and its properties. That was pretty long, but this will give you a good base level to understand more things as we go on, and we can go in depth in a little bit more of the mechanics next time. So thank you very much for joining me for part 2. In part 3, we'll be going over what you should do in your first turn. I look forward to seeing you there. Hope this has been helpful. Until then, goodbye.